The Grand Pacific Hotel's ballrooms sparkled with crystal and success, the kind of opulent setting my family always chose to celebrate themselves. My father's 60th birthday party was no exception. A lavish affair where Silicon Valley's elite gathered to honor William Parker, Senior Vice President of Global Operations at Meridian Technologies. I adjusted my simple black dress, designer, though they'd never know it, and approached the check-in table where my brother Marcus stood with his wife, both gleaming with the polished perfection of tech industry royalty. "Emily," he said, barely glancing at me. "You actually came. Dad invited me." I reached for my place card, but Marcus snatched it first. "Oh, there's been a change in seating arrangements." His smile was pure venom. "We've had some last-minute additions from Meridian's board. Important people, you understand. You'll be sitting with the staff." By staff he meant the hotel workers and event coordinators, the people my family considered beneath them. I saw my stepmother, Patricia, watching from across the room with satisfied smugness. "The staff tables are through there." Marcus gestured toward a corner near the kitchen entrance. "Where you belong, really. Still working at that consulting firm, aren't you?" I bit back a smile, thinking about the email I'd received that morning from Meridian's board of directors. If only they knew that the consulting firm was just a cover, that I'd spent the last 5 years quietly building something much bigger. "Actually," I started, but Patricia swooped in, her diamonds catching the light. "Emily, darling, surely you understand," she cooed. "We have the CEO of Meridian coming, board members, major investors. We can't have them sitting with, well, with someone who works for a living?" I finished for her. She flinched slightly at my tone. "Don't be difficult. Your father's reputation at Meridian means everything. We can't risk embarrassing him in front of his superiors." I thought about my father's position at Meridian, about the changes coming next week, about the decisions I'd been quietly making in boardrooms they'd never seen. But I just took my place card and turned toward the staff tables. "Of course not," I said softly. "We wouldn't want to embarrass anyone." The staff table was tucked away from the main celebration, but it offered a perfect view of my family's performance. Marcus, holding court with mid-level executives, probably bragging about his recent promotion to regional sales director. Patricia, fluttering between influential guests, playing the perfect corporate wife. And my father laughing too loudly at his boss's jokes, still chasing that elusive promotion to executive VP. "Not quite what you expected, Miss Chin?" I turned to find Robert, one of the hotel's event coordinators, watching me with knowing eyes. He'd used my real name, Chin, not Parker, which meant he knew exactly who I was. "The seating arrangement wasn't my choice," I replied carefully. He smiled. "No, but it might work out better than your family expects. Especially when Chairman Wallace arrives." So he did know. Of course he did. Luxury hotels like the Grand Pacific catered to the city's true power players. They knew who really controlled the big companies, who sat on which boards, who held the real power behind corporate thrones. "You don't seem surprised to find me here," I said quietly. "The Grand Pacific has hosted many Meridian events, Ms. Chen, including several board meetings." His eyes twinkled. "Though I suspect your family doesn't know about those." Before I could respond, a commotion near the entrance drew everyone's attention. Marcus straightened his tie, Patricia adjusted her jewelry, and my father practically jumped to attention. "Ladies and gentlemen," the evening's MC announced, "please welcome the CEO of Meridian Technologies, Mr. James Harrison." Applause erupted as Harrison entered, tall, distinguished, and completely unaware that his position was far less secure than he believed. Behind him came several board members, all wearing carefully neutral expressions. They knew what was coming. "William," Harrison boomed, approaching my father with practiced joviality. 60 years young. "Though I hope you're not thinking of retirement yet. We need you in global operations." My father laughed too enthusiastically. "No plans to retire, sir. Still hoping for that executive VP position." I saw several board members exchange glances. They knew that position would never come, not with the changes planned for next week. "Emily." I turned to find Thomas Wallace, chairman of Meridian's board, standing quietly beside the staff table. Unlike the others, he'd entered without fanfare, without announcement. "I thought I might find you here," he said softly. "Though I must admit, I'm surprised by the seating arrangement." "Family dynamics," I shrugged. They thought they were putting me in my place. He smiled. The same smile I'd seen in countless board meetings over the past year. Shall we adjust their perspective? Not yet, I replied, watching Marcus preen for Harrison's benefit. Let them enjoy their moment. Wallace nodded, understanding perfectly. He'd been my mentor for years, ever since I'd approached him with my ideas for revolutionizing Meridian's technology division. He was the one who'd suggested I operate in secret, building my influence through holding companies and strategic investments while my family remained blissfully unaware. The vote was unanimous, he said quietly. The board approved everything this morning. Harrison doesn't know yet, of course. Neither does your father. I watched my family basking in their perceived importance. Marcus dropping hints about his sales figures, Patricia touching Harrison's arm while laughing at his jokes, my father practically begging for attention from board members who'd already decided his fate. When do you want to make the announcement? Wallace asked. I checked my phone, seeing the confirmation email from Meridian's legal team. Everything was in place. The contracts were signed. The press release was prepared. 5 years of careful planning was about to pay off. Let them finish the champagne toast, I said. It would be a shame to spoil their celebration too early. Wallace's eyes crinkled with amusement. You're kinder than they deserve. No, I corrected him. I just understand the value of timing. Across the room, Marcus was now loudly discussing his plans for expanding his sales territory, completely unaware that his entire division would be restructured next week. Patricia was showing off her jewelry to Harrison's wife, oblivious to the fact that her social position in the corporate hierarchy was about to change dramatically. And my father. He was still chasing promises that would never be fulfilled, not realizing that his daughter, the one they'd seated with the staff, was about to become everyone's boss. Robert appeared with fresh water for our table. Chairman Wallace, he said smoothly, will you be making the announcement before or after dinner? That's up to Ms. Chen, Wallace replied. Or should I say Madam Chairman? I smiled, watching the champagne flow at the main tables. Let's wait for the perfect moment. After all, my family went to such trouble to arrange the seating. It would be rude not to let them enjoy their last few minutes of feeling superior. The moment arrived during my father's birthday toast. Harrison stood, champagne glass raised, delivering the kind of generic praise executives reserve for middle management. To William Parker, he announced, 60 years young and still climbing the corporate ladder. Marcus nudged my father, grinning. Maybe this is the year for that executive VP position, Dad. Wallace caught my eye from across the table. I nodded slightly. He stood up, straightening his tie. Actually, I have an announcement about Meridian's leadership structure. The room quieted. Harrison's smile faltered slightly. Board chairmen don't typically hijack CEO's speeches. As many of you know, Wallace continued, Meridian's board has been discussing significant changes to our executive team. Tonight we're ready to announce those changes. I watched my family's reactions. Marcus leaned forward eagerly, probably assuming his sales successes had been noticed. Patricia gripped my father's arm, her diamonds catching the light as she practically vibrated with anticipation. First, Wallace said, I'll be stepping down as chairman of the board. Gasps rippled through the room. Harrison's smile widened, until Wallace's next words wiped it away. Additionally, the board has voted for a complete restructuring of our executive leadership. Mr. Harrison will be transitioning to an advisory role, effective immediately. The champagne glass nearly fell from Harrison's hand. What? But the board never discussed. We discussed it extensively, Wallace smiled. Just not with you. Which brings me to our final announcement. He turned toward the staff table. Emily. I stood up slowly, enjoying the confused looks on my family's faces as Wallace extended his hand to me. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome your new chairman and CEO of Meridian Technologies, Ms. Emily Chen. The silence was absolute. Marcus's mouth hung open. Patricia's face had gone pale beneath her perfect makeup. And my father. He looked like someone had just rewritten his entire understanding of reality. That's impossible, Harrison sputtered. She's just a consultant. Actually, Wallace corrected him, Ms. Chen has been the driving force behind Meridian's most successful technology initiatives for the past 5 years. Through her holding company, she controls 30% of Meridian's shares. The board voted unanimously this morning to approve her appointment. I walked to the front of the room, accepting the congratulations of board members who'd known my true identity all along. My Louboutin heels, the ones my family had assumed were knockoffs, clicked against the marble floor with each step. Emily. My father's voice was barely a whisper. What? How? That consulting firm you all mocked? I smiled. It was just a cover. I've been building my influence in Meridian since the day you told me I'd never understand corporate leadership. Marcus stood up so quickly he knocked over his champagne. This is ridiculous. She can't run Meridian. She's not even a Parker anymore. She uses Mom's name. Yes, I do, I agreed. Emily Chin, daughter of Grace Chin, who you and Patricia worked so hard to erase from family photos after she died. The name you thought wasn't prestigious enough for corporate leadership. Patricia tried to recover, her social instincts kicking in. Darling, we had no idea. If you just told us. Like you told me about Dad's birthday seating arrangements? I raised an eyebrow. Speaking of arrangements, Marcus, your sales division is being restructured. We'll need you to clear out your office by Friday. The color drained from his face. You can't fire me. I'm your brother. I'm not firing you, I corrected him. I'm giving you the same opportunity you gave me tonight. A chance to sit with the workers and learn how the company actually functions. Wallace stepped forward, handling the formal announcements while I watched my family's world implode. Harrison was escorted out by security when he tried to protest. Board members who'd ignored my father for years now rushed to congratulate him on his daughter's success. Emily, please. My father finally approached, his voice shaking. If I'd known. Known what? That I was capable of running a company? That I wasn't just the disappointing daughter who needed to be hidden away at staff tables. I was wrong, he admitted quietly. About everything. I studied him. This man who'd spent decades chasing corporate validation, who'd let his wife and son treat me like an embarrassment, who'd never once stood up for me until I had power over him. Yes, you were. I straightened my jacket. And now you have a choice. You can retire with a generous package, or you can stay and work under your daughter's leadership. Either way, things will be different. Different how? For starters, I smiled, you'll be sitting at the staff table at all future corporate events. I hear it offers an excellent perspective on how power really works. Over the next few weeks, Meridian transformed. Harrison's old guard was replaced with innovative leaders who'd earned their positions through talent rather than connections. Marcus was demoted to an entry-level sales position, where he finally had to learn the business from the ground up. Patricia's social circle imploded as corporate wives realized she no longer had any influence to peddle. She stopped appearing at company events after I enforced a strict no-family policy. Except for major shareholders, of course. My father chose to stay, accepting a minor position in operations. Sometimes I catch him watching me run board meetings from his seat in the back, finally understanding what real corporate leadership looks like. Last week, during Meridian's annual charity gala, Marcus tried to pull rank on a junior employee. Do you know who I am? He demanded. I'm the chairman's brother. Former regional sales director, currently on probation in entry-level sales, I corrected, walking up behind him. And if you ever try to use my position to intimidate staff again, you'll be looking for a new job. Clear? He slunk away to the staff table where Patricia sat pretending not to notice her loss of status. Harsh, Wallace observed, joining me. But necessary. They needed to learn, I replied, watching my family huddle at their assigned table. Success isn't about where you sit at parties. It's about what you do when no one's watching. Later that night, alone in my office, the same one Harrison had once promised my father, I found an old photo from my mother's funeral. 14-year-old me standing apart from the family, already being pushed aside for not fitting their image of success. I placed it beside Meridian's latest earnings report, which showed record profits under my leadership. Sometimes the best revenge isn't proving people wrong. It's becoming so powerful that their opinions become irrelevant. The next morning, my assistant brought in the seating chart for next month's corporate retreat. Your family's table assignments, Ms. Chin? I smiled, thinking of Patricia's designer dresses and Marcus's expensive suits, now wasted on the staff section. Same as always, I replied. Some people need a permanent reminder of where they placed others when they had the chance to be kind. After all, leadership isn't just about running a company. Sometimes it's about teaching people that every seat at the table matters, especially the ones they think aren't important enough for their presence. And sometimes, the best view of success comes from the tables they tried to use as punishment.
The call came on a Wednesday, ordinary enough that I still had coffee breath and Post-it notes stuck to my sleeve. From the morning rush, I had just sunk into my desk chair when my phone lit up with a number I didn't recognize. No caller ID, no reason to answer. But I did. Hello. Is this Nora Delaney? I hesitated. Yes. This is Charles with Liberty National Bank. We're calling regarding your mortgage balance of $523,000. We've sent several notices, but I don't have a mortgage. I said, my voice sharper than I meant it to be. You must have the wrong person. A pause. Ma'am, the file we're reviewing shows your name. Date of birth and social security number. You're listed as the primary borrower. The loan was opened 3 years ago. 3 years. My mind stopped. That was the year Madeline, my younger sister, started talking about buying a house. She'd called it her fresh start, said she wanted something big enough for a family. I remembered her waving Pinterest photos across the dinner table, laughing about credit scores like they were bad jokes, Mom said. We'll figure something out. Family always finds a way, but not this way. I ended the call politely somehow and sat staring at nothing for a full minute. The hum of my laptop fan filled the silence. My palms were damp, my mouth was dry. I told myself it had to be a mistake, some kind of mix-up, a typo, maybe someone with the same name in the same state, but my gut didn't believe it. I tore through the drawer beside my bed, digging past old pay stubs and birthday cards. I found the last letter I'd gotten from Liberty, a generic flyer tossed months ago. I didn't think anything of it at the time. Now it felt like a warning I hadn't understood. I sat on the floor of my apartment surrounded by envelopes and loose sheets, staring down at my life in pieces. I had no property, no car loan, no joint anything. My finances were simple by design, and yet someone had signed me into $500,000 of debt, and not just someone. There was only one group of people who had my full legal name, my social, my signature on paper from years of helping them fill out FAFSA forms and doctor paperwork and bank applications. My family. The thought formed before I could stop it. I didn't want to believe it. But some betrayals don't kick the door in, they just quietly turn the lock behind you. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, tracing the same thought over and over. If they had asked, would I have said yes? I didn't think so. But that wasn't the point. They never gave me the chance. By morning, I had stopped pretending it was a mistake. The pieces fit too well, the timing, the language, the silence. Madeline had been talking about her dream house just months before that mortgage date. A wraparound porch, a finished basement room for future possibilities. She was between jobs back then. Her credit was shot, but our mother said not to worry. Maddie always finds a way. Apparently, I was the way. I started pulling old documents from my file cabinet things I hadn't touched in years, old tax forms, social security copies, insurance policies I'd co-signed when Mom had surgery. There in my own handwriting were the keys to the kingdom. Everything someone would need to impersonate me, and I had handed them over piece by piece because I was the responsible one. The fixer, the quiet daughter who didn't make waves. I thought about the way my mother used to say it almost proudly. Nora doesn't need help. She's strong. She figures things out. That was always the trade-off Madeline got. Grace. I got silence. Growing up, it was little things. She'd forget to clean up, and it was, she's going through a phase. I'd forget, and it was, you know better. Nora, she'd crash her car, and Dad would say, that's what insurance is for. I'd ask for a used laptop, and Mom would remind me. We're not made of money. They didn't hate me. That would have been easier. They just didn't see me as someone who could break. And maybe that's why they thought it was fine signing my name. Taking my credit, folding me into a lie that could have ruined my life. Maybe to them, I was strong enough to carry it, but underneath that calm exterior, something had shifted. Not rage, not revenge, clarity. I opened my laptop and requested the loan documents from the bank. The woman on the phone sounded polite, efficient, unaware that her PDF would change everything. When it arrived, I stared at the screen. There it was, page after page. My name, my birth date, my information, my signature. Except it wasn't mine. It was close. Too close. Someone had practiced, studied, maybe even traced, but they hadn't copied the hesitation in my R or the slight upward tilt in the Y of Delaney. This signature was cleaner, straighter, confident in a way mine had never been. Looking at it felt like staring at a version of myself I didn't know. A forgery that fooled the world, but not me. And the scariest part, I knew exactly who had written it. I didn't call them. I didn't text Madeline or send some shaking paragraph to my parents asking how they could do this. I didn't scream or demand, I just started collecting. Every copy of every document that tied me to them. Tax returns, medical authorizations, school loan forms I had co-signed when Dad lost his job. I went back nearly 10 years, folder by folder, building a quiet paper trail. There were so many signatures, so many little moments where I had said yes out of duty, out of love, out of habit. I had said yes when no one even asked. One by one, I printed my own records, credit reports, identity protection logs, a list of accounts under my name. I'd never owned a property, but here it was. Liberty National's full mortgage package with my name on the dotted line. Notarized, legally binding, signed, sealed, and stolen. For a while, I kept all of it on my kitchen table sorted in neat piles like I was prepping for a school project. But this wasn't school, this was survival. A friend from work, Sloan, noticed something was off. She caught me staring too long at nothing during lunch and pulled me aside. "You look like you're holding your breath," she said. I told her everything. I don't know why. Maybe because she was one of the only people who ever called to ask how are you and meant it. She didn't try to comfort me, just pulled out her phone and said, "Call this guy, he's smart, doesn't flinch at family messes." That's how I met Mr. Whitaker. He was older, ex-military maybe, with the kind of voice that didn't waste syllables. I sat across from him at a small cafe 3 blocks from my apartment. No receptionist, no elevator lobby. Just him, a legal pad, and a black coffee. He flipped through my stack without a word. When he finished, he closed the folder and looked me in the eye. "You understand what this is, right?" "I think so," I said. "Fraud and identity theft," he added, "at minimum." Hearing those words aloud made something tighten in my chest. I nodded. "I don't want to destroy them. I just want this undone." "You're not destroying anyone," he said. "You're reclaiming what's yours." Over the next hour, he walked me through the steps, file a police report, notify the bank in writing, submit evidence, dispute the mortgage legally, press charges if necessary. "It's going to be long," he warned, "and it's going to burn any bridge that's left." I thought about that word burn, as if the bridge was still there to begin with, as if I hadn't already been walking alone for years. When I got home, I opened an old birthday card from a box I hadn't touched since I moved in. It was from my mom. I recognized the loopy handwriting before I even read it. "Happy 28th to our steady one. We don't say it enough, but you've always been our rock, our backup plan. We're so lucky to have you, our backup plan." It was meant to be sweet, I know that now, but all I could feel was the truth behind it. They had seen me as reliable, strong, quiet, so quiet, they thought I'd never say no. But I was done. Being the plan they used when everything else failed, now I had one of my own. Sunday came fast, too fast. I stood in front of my parents' house, the one with the white shutters and cracked driveway, gripping a folder in my purse like it might burn through the leather. I hadn't said a word to them all week. Not since I got the documents. Not since I sat in Mr. Whitaker's office and realized this wasn't just messy, it was criminal. Still, I knocked. The door opened almost instantly. My mother beamed. "Nora, sweetheart." I was just about to pull the roast out of the oven, like nothing had happened. I stepped inside. The house smelled like lemon cleaner and onions, the same way it always had. Madeline was curled up on the couch, scrolling on her phone, an empty wine glass beside her. My father sat in his recliner watching a football game, like the world hadn't shifted. No one looked at me too long. I sat quietly through dinner. Pot roast mashed potatoes, green beans with too much garlic. My mother made small talk. Madeline complained about her HOA. Dad grunted at the TV. I waited. After the dishes were cleared, I spoke. "Hey, quick, question." 3 pairs of eyes turned toward me. Mild curiosity. No tension. Just another one of Nora's practical inquiries, probably about insurance or tires. Does anyone know anything about a mortgage with my name on it? Silence, the kind that makes the air heavy. Madeline's shoulders tightened. My mother's smile froze mid-expression. My father cleared his throat. I didn't move, didn't blink, just waited. Finally, Mom spoke, her voice soft, like we were discussing a late bill. Oh, honey, that's just paperwork. Maddie needed help qualifying. It's not like you're paying anything. It's family, Madeline added, eyes still fixed on the table. You have good credit, I don't. It's not fair if you won't help. Not fair. Like I'd been selfish for asking. Like it was normal. I looked at them and the woman who raised me, the sister I used to protect from nightmares, the father who once told me I was his calm in the storm. They didn't see what they'd done as wrong. They saw it as expected. I nodded once, slow, neutral. Thanks for explaining, I said quietly. Madeline relaxed already, back on her phone. My father reached for the remote. My mother looked relieved, like a crisis had been smoothed over. None of them saw what had shifted. They thought I was still the same. Nora. Still the quiet one. Still safe. But I hadn't come to fight. I'd come to listen, to give them a chance, and they used it to justify the lie. The next morning, I filed the police report. The officer at the station had the look of someone who'd seen too many family cases, tired, polite, careful. When I handed him the folder I'd built with Mr. Whitaker's help, he flipped through slowly, his brow tightening with every page. "You're sure you want to move forward with this?" he asked, not out of doubt but hesitation. "If I don't," I said, "they'll just keep doing it." He nodded, stamped the papers. It was official. That afternoon, I mailed the certified letter to Liberty National. Inside was the police report, a formal dispute notice, and copies of my ID. I watched the clerk at the post office slide it into the outgoing tray like it was any other envelope, but to me, it was a severance. A quiet final line drawn in ink. I didn't warn them. No angry phone call, no confrontation, just silence. 3 days passed, then 5, then a full week. No calls, no messages. Just the dull ache of waiting for something to break. It finally did. Friday night, just after sunset, there was a knock on my door. I peeked through the peephole and saw my mother standing outside, wrapped in her nicest coat, face tight with something between fury and fear. I opened the door but didn't step back. She didn't wait for an invitation. "How could you?" she hissed. "How dare you go to the police?" Her voice was sharp, but beneath it, I heard it. The panic. Not about me, about what it meant, about exposure. I said nothing. "I trusted you to be understanding," she continued. "Madeline needed help. Family sticks together." "No," I said softly. "Family asks, they don't steal." She blinked like the words hit harder because they were so calm. "You've ruined everything," she snapped. "Do you know how this looks?" I nearly laughed, but I didn't. I didn't ruin anything, I said. I just stopped pretending it wasn't broken. She opened her mouth to argue, but I was already closing the door. The latch clicked into place with the softest sound, but to me, it felt louder than any scream that night. Madeline called 12 times, left 4 voicemails, each one angrier than the last. I deleted them without listening. The next morning, I woke to an email from Liberty National. "We have suspended the mortgage loan pending further investigation." Attached was a formal apology. They were reviewing the notary records and the signature file. My credit score was still damaged, but the unraveling had begun. I called Mr. Whitaker. "They're taking it seriously," I said. "They usually do," he replied, "when people don't yell and instead show them the truth." He was right. I hadn't shouted. I hadn't begged. I had just stood still while the truth did its work, and somehow that was enough. In the weeks that followed, the silence around me grew thicker. No more texts. No more invitations. No more guilt-laced reminders that I should be grateful for the family I had. They didn't want to fix anything. They just wanted the version of me who kept saying yes, but she was gone. Instead, I filled my weekends with things I had forgotten I liked. Walking to the farmer's market, buying flowers for my kitchen table, sitting in the quiet with a book, and no phone ringing. I didn't want revenge. Not really. I just wanted distance and peace. and for the first time, I had both. Months passed. Spring crept in quietly, trees blooming in soft pinks and yellows like the world had decided to start fresh. Whether I was ready or not, I kept my head down, answered emails from Mr. Whitaker, signed documents, checked my credit report like it was a weather forecast I didn't trust. The case was still open. The damage was still there, but something inside me had settled. I spent my weekends in motion, walking trails, trying pottery at the community center, volunteering at the library on Saturdays. Nothing dramatic, just mine, hours that belonged to no one else. One morning, I stood behind my booth at a local artisan fair, surrounded by mismatched mugs and bowls I had shaped with unsure hands. A woman picked up a piece labeled Reclamation, a cup slightly off-center, smooth in some places, imperfect in others. She turned it over in her palm. "Why that name?" I shrugged. "Because it wasn't supposed to exist, but it does." She smiled, paid in cash, and walked away. That night, I sat on my balcony with a cup of tea and the first real quiet I'd earned in years. Not the silence of being ignored, but the silence of being unclaimed. That was when I saw them. My mother, my father, and Madeline standing at the edge of the parking lot near my apartment, like they weren't sure whether to come closer or walk away. They looked smaller than I remembered. Madeline's makeup was smudged. My father's shirt was wrinkled untucked. My mother clutched her purse like it was the only solid thing she had left. I walked down the stairs slowly, not rushing, not hiding. When they saw me, they froze. "Nora," my mother started, voice trembling. "We made mistakes, but we're still family." Madeline stepped forward. "I just need help. Just for a little while. Please don't shut us out." There was no fire in me anymore, no anger, just a deep, still quiet that came from knowing they weren't here because they loved me. They were here because they needed me again. I set down my bag and looked at them. Each of them. Really looked. "I hope," I said carefully, "you one day understand what real family means." They didn't interrupt, but it's not something you can steal or fake or expect when it's convenient. I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out a manila envelope. Inside was a printed copy of the forged mortgage document, my name. Their signatures, a red stamp across the front that simply read, "Void." Tucked in behind it was something else, a birthday card from years ago, the one that said, "You've always been our backup plan." I handed the envelope to my mother. Her hands shook as she took it. "I'm not angry," I said. "Not anymore." She opened her mouth to speak, but I didn't wait. "I'm finally free," I said, "and I'm not coming back." Then I turned and walked away. The sound of my footsteps on the stairs felt heavier than any argument I could have had. I didn't look back. When I reached the top landing, I paused. The wind lifted the edge of my coat. The sun was starting to set, casting long shadows across the parking lot. I whispered, not to them, but to myself. Sometimes walking away is the loudest thing you'll ever say, and I meant it. They used my name like it belonged to them, but I walked away. No screaming, no warning, just silence they couldn't ignore. If you've ever been treated like the backup plan, you'll understand why. I never looked back. Subscribe if you're done being quiet. Some truths aren't told to be forgiven, just remembered. I wasn't supposed to see the invitation. It wasn't mailed to me or handed over at dinner with an awkward smile. There was no conversation, no hesitation, not even a passive-aggressive oversight. I found out the way people find out about parties they were never meant to attend. Scrolling through social media too late to pretend it didn't hurt. It was a photo, a white satin backdrop, a gold-embossed card balanced on soft folds of fabric, peonies, rose gold accents. The caption read, "The countdown begins. Can't wait to celebrate with all my loved ones, all her loved ones, but not me." For a full minute, I stared at the screen, trying to make the words rearrange themselves. I told myself maybe she just hadn't sent mine yet. Maybe there was a delay. Maybe God, I don't know. Maybe she wanted to surprise me in person, though. That had never been her style. The truth didn't land like a slap. It settled like weight, heavy, familiar. Over the last 6 months, I had wired nearly $8,000 to cover deposits, the venue, the caterer. Half the dress, I never asked for credit. She never offered it, and still in some foolish corner of me, I thought maybe, just maybe that gesture bought me a seat at the table. I tapped out a message, simple and soft, the kind you send when you're not ready for a real answer. Hey, just saw your post. I never got my invite. Did it get lost in the mail? Then I waited. I kept waiting through lunch, through a rush job at the shop, through the hour I spent replacing a Bentley's rear axle. Around sunset, I checked again. Nothing. It wasn't until 10:30 p.m. that my phone buzzed. Hey, I meant to talk to you about this. It's been really hard, narrowing the guest list. We're going for a specific vibe with the event. You know, curated. Nothing personal. I know you'll be happy for me from afar. Love you. Happy for her? From afar. I read the message 3 times. Then, once more, just to be sure I wasn't misreading what I already knew. She hadn't forgotten. She had excluded me. I wasn't part of her vibe. I was the oil-stained sister with rough hands and worn jeans. I didn't wear soft makeup or polished heels. I didn't sip wine and say, at charcuterie boards. I ran a garage my own. I made good money, the honest kind, but I didn't look the part. She never said it aloud, but I'd seen it in this way she wrinkled her nose when I showed up straight from work, in the way she once introduced me at a family brunch. That's my sister Rachel. She does car stuff. Car stuff. That night I didn't sleep. Not out of anger, not even sadness. It was something quieter, like standing outside a room you helped build, hearing the party through the walls, and knowing for the first time they locked the door on purpose. I wish I could say it was the first time, but exclusion in my family didn't happen with shouting or slammed doors. It was quieter than that, refined even. It came in soft rewrites. Holiday photos where I was always at the edge of the frame. Group chats where plans were made and I was added after birthdays where I was thanked for the gift but not for showing up. The wedding was just the first time they made it official. When we were kids, my mom used to say I was practical. Not creative, like Vanessa, not graceful, but dependable. That was her word. Reliable. At the time, I thought it was a compliment. I didn't realize it was the start of a life where I'd be leaned on but rarely seen. Vanessa was the kind of child who needed the center of the room. She danced in talent shows, wore headbands with rhinestones, and cried when her shoelaces didn't match. I was the one who fixed her bike tires, set up her science fair poster, reheated her leftovers. By high school, I had stopped asking my mom if she liked my outfits. She always looked disappointed anyway. You don't want to try something softer. You're a girl, Rachel. I wore steel-toed boots to prom. Not because I wanted to, but because I worked a shift that morning and had blisters. After Dad died, I dropped out of college and moved back home to help run the garage. Mom didn't fight me on it. She just told me I was doing what you're good at. Vanessa cried at the funeral, then posted a photo the next day with the caption, "My first hero. Rest well, Daddy." She spelled hero with an E, missing. But it was me who sat through the probate paperwork. Me who cleaned out the office. Me who negotiated with 3 angry customers the week after we buried him. No one asked if I was okay. Still, I paid for Vanessa's last semester of college when her loans didn't come through. Paid again when she moved to New York and needed a security deposit. When she came home with a failed startup and a diamond ring, I was the one who told Mom not to say anything judgmental. So when she sent that message, "You don't really fit the vibe," I didn't just hear my sister's voice. I heard a chorus. My mother adjusting her scarf at church, whispering, "Try to look like you belong." My aunt laughing when I parked my truck in front of the baby shower venue. "Couldn't you have borrowed something less, Rachel?" I kept waiting for someone, anyone to say something. "You deserve to be there. This isn't right. You matter." Instead, I got silence, polite, curated silence. That's when I realized I wasn't invited because I didn't belong in the family they wanted to show off. Not now. Maybe not ever. And still, my name was on the checks. The next morning, I opened my banking app. There were 3 pending transfers scheduled for Friday, the final payment for the florist, the remaining balance for the venue, and the cake. $1.20 for something 5-tiered in lavender that I hadn't even been shown a photo of. I hovered over the transaction's thumb, resting on the cancel button. Then I minimized the screen, closed my phone. Sat there outside my window. The sun was low and peach-colored over the back of the garage. The air smelled like warm rubber and coffee grounds. In the corner of the yard, under a tarp, was the old Mustang GT my dad and I used to work on. He bought it for $800 and called it a project. Not a problem, I hadn't touched it in over a year. That afternoon, I pulled off the tarp and let the sun hit the faded red paint. It was dusty. The leather cracked. The engine grumbled like it didn't quite forgive me for the neglect. I wiped down the hood anyway, slow and steady until I could see my own reflection in the swirl of metal and memory. I wasn't angry. Not in the way people expect. I didn't fantasize about showing up in a gown and causing a scene. I didn't write long texts or cry in the shower. I just didn't want to help anymore. That realization came so softly it startled me. Like when you finally admit you're tired, not because someone said so, but because your body stopped pretending otherwise. Still, part of me hesitated. That night, I stood in the kitchen half-lit by the glow from the fridge and stared at the wedding file Vanessa had emailed me months earlier. Folder labeled Event Timeline, Don't Delete Inside, was everything. Vendor contacts, payment due dates, guest list spreadsheets. My initials RW next to almost every checkmarked item except one tab labeled Immediate Family Seating. I clicked, read down the rows. Mom, Uncle Stephen, Aunt Clara, Vanessa's fiancé's parents, a couple cousins, bridesmaids, no Rachel, not forgotten, just not listed. I didn't cancel the transfers that night I wanted to. I told myself I should, but I didn't. Instead, I opened a drawer in the hallway and pulled out the cassette player my dad left me. He recorded messages, sometimes grocery lists, reminders, little notes in his gravelly voice. I pressed play and let his voice fill the empty house. If they can't see how much you do, Rach, that's not your failure, that's their blindness. I sat on the floor and let that sentence loop through me like warm static. By morning, I opened the banking app again. This time my hand didn't shake. One by one, I hit cancel. Then I shut off my phone and went back outside to finish polishing the Mustang. No texts, no explanations, no announcement. Just silence, but this time it was mine. I didn't mark the date on my calendar. Didn't circle it in red or block off my schedule, but I knew my body remembered. Somewhere between the way the light hit the floor that morning and how quiet the street felt. I knew it was wedding day. I got up early like always, brewed the same bitter coffee, pulled on the same coveralls, went into the garage and replaced the brake pads on a Porsche someone had dropped off the night before. At 10:45 a.m., my phone buzzed. Not a call, just a text from a friend who worked part-time for a local events company. 3 words. They didn't pay. I didn't ask who. I didn't need to. By 11:00 a.m., I was sitting in my truck 2 blocks from the venue, not close enough to be seen. Just enough to watch the corners of the event unfold, like a play no one rehearsed. The building was a repurposed mansion, all white columns and glass-paneled doors draped in seasonal florals. A place made for appearances. Vanessa's kind of place. Cars pulled up rented black sedans, pastel SUVs. Guests stepped out in cocktail dresses matching ties, heels catching in the gravel. They looked around. Some checked their phones, others adjusted boutonnieres, but the doors didn't open. By 11:20, someone knocked, then again louder. A wedding planner paced outside with a clipboard and increasingly anxious gestures. A man in a vest tried the knob. Locked. At 11:27 a.m., the venue manager stepped outside. His hands moved flat and wide, the universal sign for, "We're done here." From where I sat, I couldn't hear the words, but I could see the faces. Vanessa's fiancé looked confused. The planner was now on the phone, pacing in circles. A bridesmaid kicked off her heels and sat on the curb. Then came my mother emerging from a black car in navy silk, holding her purse, like it could fix things. She scanned the scene, lips pressed thin, and finally, Vanessa. She wore ivory. Something sleek and modern with pearl buttons down the back. Her hair was pinned into place like she had planned it that way for years, and maybe she had. But even from 2 blocks away, I could see the look on her face when someone whispered in her ear. Confusion, then disbelief, then something else. Panic. She turned around once searching the crowd like maybe someone had the answer. Like maybe someone would fix it the way I always had. But this time, no one moved. I sat there engine off radio, humming low, some old folk station playing a slow, mournful guitar. The cassette from my dad was in the glove box, but I didn't press play. I didn't need to. The silence inside me was steady now. No bitterness, no vengeance. Just the knowledge that I was no longer the safety net. At 11:42 a.m., I turned the key, pulled away from the curb, and left them standing there dressed for a celebration that couldn't start waiting for help that wasn't coming. And still, they hadn't noticed who was missing. By the time I got back to the shop, my phone had 9 missed calls, 4 from Vanessa, 3 from Mom, 2 from numbers I didn't recognize, probably bridesmaids or vendors. I didn't pick up. I didn't need to hear what I already knew. Somewhere between the venue's locked doors and the panicked voices, it had dawned on them that the person they erased was also the one holding the foundation together. At 12:17 p.m., the texts started. Vanessa, please call me. It's an emergency. Mom, Rachel. This isn't funny, Vanessa. You can't just bail last minute. The cake is already made. The flowers are on their way. Mom, you promised. We all counted on you. Not a single one said sorry. Not one. They weren't upset because I'd been hurt. They were upset because they had been embarrassed. At 12:44 p.m., Vanessa finally wrote, "You let me fail." I stared at the message. Let it sit. Then I typed back, "No, you failed when you decided I didn't belong in your day." She called immediately. I let it ring twice before answering. "What the hell is wrong with you?" she snapped. "Nothing," I said quietly. "I just stopped being useful." She inhaled sharply. "You're being vindictive. That's not who you are." "No," I agreed. "It's who I became." After realizing I was financing a day I wasn't welcome in, there was a pause, just long enough for something real to show through. Then she said, "This was never about you. It's about aesthetic. It's about presentation. You know how these things work." I almost laughed. "You mean it's about how things look, not how they are?" "No, I mean," she started, but her voice caught. I waited, then I heard it. That shift, that edge of desperation people reach when they realize the version of you they crafted, the quiet one. The convenient one has stopped playing along. "Look," she said softer now. "If I invite you now, will you help?" I didn't respond right away. Instead, I walked to the drawer in my desk, took out the original wedding invitation I'd printed from her post. It was beautiful. Ornate lettering. Dusty rose trim gold foil accents. There was no Rachel anywhere on it. I held the phone close and said, "You built a day without me. You can pay for it without me too." Then I hung up. Later that evening, I posted a single photo. No caption, just a scan of the vendor invoice log with my initials circled in red next to each paid deposit, and a copy of the guest list where my name never appeared. I didn't check the comments. I didn't reply to the messages that came flooding in. But I knew people saw it. The bridesmaid who had smiled at me fake-wide last Thanksgiving. The cousin who once joked that I smelled like a transmission. The uncle who hadn't asked how I was doing since the funeral. They all saw it. And for once, they couldn't unsee it. Not because I said anything loud, but because I stopped pretending with them the same way they'd stopped pretending I mattered. It's been a year. No one ever said the word sorry. Not my mother. Not Vanessa. Not anyone who stood on that front lawn in their pastel suits and heels looking for someone to blame. But no one asked me for money again either. That part was new. For the first few weeks there were attempts, soft ones awkward. A birthday card from Mom that read, "Family is about forgiveness. Come by sometime." A forwarded article from Vanessa titled, "How Sisters Heal." I didn't respond. I didn't block them either. Just let the silence stay. It knew what to do. I kept working. The shop did well. Better than before. Actually, I hired 2 new techs, both young women who reminded me of myself before I learned to flinch when someone used the word presentation. We fixed things, fenders, engines, busted radiators. I stopped trying to fix the past. One afternoon in November, I got a package. No return label. Inside a folded cream envelope with a gold crest. The same wedding invitation. Still pristine, but this one had something handwritten on the back. My name. Just my name. No message, no apology, no signature. I stared at it for a long time before sliding it into the bottom drawer of my desk. Then I reached for the photo of my father, the one where we're both covered in grease, laughing at something I can't remember. I taped it to the inside lid of the toolbox I use every morning. Next to it, I pinned the printed guest list. The version without me, that's my shrine now. Not to bitterness, not to pain, to memory, to truth. People ask sometimes, mostly customers who've been coming for years, why I don't go to family holidays anymore. Why I don't post pictures of gatherings or tag anyone in Thanksgiving toasts. I just say, they wanted a version of me that looked better on paper. Then I smile, offer them their keys, and move on. I don't rehearse arguments in the shower anymore. I don't linger in the what-ifs. I know what I was to them. A backbone when convenient, a background when inconvenient. And now, I am neither. I am a name they once used, a presence they once omitted, a silence that now finally speaks louder than their stories. I didn't leave the family. They left me off the list. I just made it official. And no, I don't want their apology. I just wanted the lie to die.